Hello, I'm Wes McCauley. I'm one of the directors of the Fraser Valley Mountain Bike Association, and I'm going to show you how to use QGIS, which is a free open source GIS platform, and BC LiDAR data to create highly detailed terrain models for analysis for your local riding area. The purpose of this video is to help you use these tools so that you can much more efficiently plan the location of a new trail. Up on my screen right now I have QGIS, and what we're looking at here is what's called a GeoTIF. Now TIFF files are image files, but GeoTIF files are special in that each one of these pixels knows its location on the planet. So depending on the color of the pixel, it's at a lower or a higher elevation, and all of that elevation data is stored for each one of the pixels inside this file. Now with GeoTIFs we can do all kinds of incredible things. We can create a shaded view of the terrain. So here you can see this is Vedder Mountain near Chilliwack. You can see all the creeks, roads, even hand-built trails. Those show up in this LiDAR data set. Now what LiDAR is when an aircraft overflies the area with a LiDAR scanner, laser points are sent down into the ground below. There'll be two bounces. There'll be one bounce that hits the ground. There'll be another bounce that hits the tree layer, and they separate out these two sets of data to either figure out what the height of the trees is or what the height of the ground is. So obviously what we're interested in is the laser bounces off the ground layer. And with that we can create these highly detailed models of the mountain. So in QGIS, not only can we get these shaded analyses of the mountain, we can bring in our trails from Trailforks and just overlay them on top of the model. And probably most interesting to us today is we're going to be able to get QGIS to analyze the slope of the mountain. So this will help us avoid areas where it's just too steep to build a trail. And also what this data will do is it will show us where there are existing natural benches or man-made trails that maybe have been abandoned or forgotten, and we can find them in the LiDAR data set and use that to either build a new trail at that same location or maybe just to build an access using that old road to help plan and establish a new trail. So what we're going to do here is just walk you through the process of creating a data set like the one that you see on the screen. So I'm going to close this down. And first of all here we're going to show you how to get QGIS on your computer. So what you need to do is to Google download QGIS. It should bring you to this page and you can download it for Mac or for Windows. So once you've got QGIS up on your screen, go to Project and create a new project. So now what we need to do is download one of those LiDAR data sets. So Google the BC Open LiDAR portal. It'll take you first of all to this home page here, then switch over to the Discovery tab and you'll be shown a map of BC. The blue toned areas are places where LiDAR scans have been done by the province of British Columbia. And over here on the right we've got all of these different layers. Now if you remember earlier I was telling you about the two laser bounces, one that goes off the tree layer and one that goes off the ground layer. The tree layer, that's called a surface model, digital surface model. So you can see we've got these check boxes here for the digital surface model. We're not interested in that, so we'll turn those off. And really what we're interested in is just the digital elevation model, the DEM data sets. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to zoom in to the Vedder Mountain area, and you'll notice that there are two different kinds of DEM data sets. There's 1 to 2500 and there is 1 to 20,000. Now the 1 to 2500 are slightly more detailed, but the grids are smaller, so it makes it less convenient to build your terrain model from these smaller grids. So we are going to use the 1 to 20,000 data sets here, and you can see that Vedder Mountain actually needs 2 of these grids, so I had to download both of these grids. And so when you find your riding area that you want to analyze, click on the grid, and then LiDAR BC will show you what data sets are available for this area. So here we've got a 2016 data set, a 2017 data set. So these are both similar, precision, 1 meter precision. And so either one of these would be fine. I've downloaded the 2017 data set here, so I would just right click on this and save the file. These files can be quite big, anywhere from 100 to 300 megabytes. So once the file has been downloaded, I've got it on the desktop here, and I've created a folder, as you should, for each one of the riding areas that you are planning to analyze. So what you'll need to do is create a single QGIS project for your one riding area. So here I'm just going to create a single data set for Better Mountain, and normally I would be using 2 of those DEM files, but I'm just going to download the one for today. Alright, so back in QGIS I've started this new project, so what I'm going to do here is save it as, and of course what I'm going to do is put it inside the folder that I've created for my project. So I will just call this Better Mountain. Alright, so now that TIF that I downloaded, so here it is on my desktop, I'm going to move it into that same folder. There we go. And so QGIS works with both raster and vector data. And of course that TIF image is a raster, it's raster data. So under layer here, we're going to add a raster layer for that TIF. So go to add layer under the layer menu and choose add raster layer. And here under raster data sets, hit the button and click on that DEM file we've just downloaded. So go ahead and click it and choose add. So now you folks will see the new layer has been shown in the list here. We can hit close. Now, what this band represents is the colors that are assigned to the elevation of the terrain data that is in this DEM TIF file, this GeoTIF. And so here it says it's starting from minus 1,000 meters. That doesn't make any sense. I'll show you what we need to do here. If we just double click on the band, your minimum should always be 0 or maybe 100 meters. It doesn't really matter, but here I am just going to change this to 0. And you'll see that the image darkens up. Now, even if I didn't make this change, that's not going to affect anything that happens in the future. So here, it just makes more sense to show, elevations from 0 to whatever the tallest pixel is on the mountain, which is approximately 1,100 meters. Now, the next thing that we want to do is to create our contours. Now, we don't actually need to see this GeoTIF anymore. Now that it's been imported into the project, we're really not going to be making it visible in the future. So I'm going to turn the layer off. And now what we're going to do is to go and create our contours. So under raster, we're going to go to the conversion menu here, not conversion extraction, and this is where we create our contours. So in this dialog box, we're working off the GeoTIF. 10 meter contours, that's probably fine. We're basing it, of course, on the elevation data from the pixels, because that's what's being shown here. Now what we need to do is to save these contours that QGIS is going to create. If we don't save them, then we have to rerun this contour analysis each time we open a project, so we don't want to do that. So here where it says save to temporary file, go over to the right-hand side and click Save to File. And in here, I'll call it Contours. 10 meters for 10 meter contours. So I'll hit save and I'll hit run. So it'll take a few seconds here, but once we're done, we'll get all of our 10 meter contours for the entire data set. Okay, the contours have been created, so we can hit close. Now what we want to do, of course, is change the color, make them black. And we've got some extra work we need to do, like labeling the contours and having primary contours at 100 meter intervals. So if we double click on contours here, if we go to the symbology panel, we're going to change the color from orange. So here you can go to the third tab, standard colors, choose black, line weight's okay. And now if we hit OK, you can see that the contours are black. Now what we want to do is set some primary contours at 100-meter intervals. So again, double click on the contours layer. And now what we want to do is to switch on a symbology panel from single symbol to rule based. Now what we need to do is go down to the bottom here and add a rule. So the label 100M for, what does this rule do? It creates our 100-meter contours. Now we want QGIS to find the 100-meter contours so that we can give them a thicker line weight. Now here in the filter, we've got to put in a little bit of syntax. I'll show it to you here. So take this exact piece of text here. We do have to modify it. This would give us 50-meter primary contours. So what this says is if your elevation is the same as 100, an increment of 100, then you've met the criteria of the filter. Now what we need to do is scroll down in this dialog box here. We're still going to make the contours black, but what we're going to do is make the line weight heavier. So now when we hit OK, you folks can see where our primary contours are. Now let's get some labels on those primary contours. So again, I'll go back into the contours layer here. So here you can see the two line weights. So if you want to, you can turn off your secondary contours and just leave on your primaries. I'm going to double click on the parent of the layer again there, the layer name, and I'm going to go down to labels here, and I'm going to choose rule-based labeling. Okay, so again, we're going to go down to the bottom here and add our rule 100M, and I'm going to paste in that syntax again. Of course, I've got to edit it, so it's checking for 100-meter contours. And then we're going to go down to our text here. We can leave the text at 10 points. I actually like to make it a little bit smaller, so 8 points. And then what we want to do is to put a buffer, so a little piece of white background in behind the text so that the text is easier to read and so that the contour line doesn't sort of strike through the text. So we've got that buffer there. We'll make it 0.8. That's all we need. And then go down to placement and check on line so that the contour label is right on the contour line, and then uncheck above line. Scroll down a little farther here, and we will put a distance in of 100 mils for how often these contour labels are going to repeat. All right, let's hit OK, and OK, and whoa, OK here. That's obviously the wrong information. Let's go back and fix that. So under labels here, the problem was I was using the unique database number of each contour line. That doesn't make any sense. We want to, of course, use the elevation data. So that was the problem here in the labels section. So I hit OK, and OK. Now we've got that sorted. So here you can see our contours are repeating now and then. So if you want to go back and change that in the future, that's something that you can do. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do is to do that shading analysis that we saw earlier, which is really great for visualization. So if we go to the raster menu and we choose analysis, you can choose hillshade. So now what we need to do is to tell QGIS again to use that GeoTIFF dataset. All of these values are fine. Don't want to do any vertical scale exaggeration. And the altitude of the light, so this is a virtual light that shines down on the mountain, so it's going to shine down on a 45-degree angle. The angle at which you want the sunlight to originate is something that you should think about. So 0 is north, 90 degrees is east, 180 south, and 270 west. So I like to use sunlight from, say, southwest or southeast. So light from the southeast would be 135. So I'm going to put that in here. And just like we did before, we don't want to save to a temporary file. So where you see that, make sure you scroll down, save it to a file here, and then I'm just going to indicate hill shade southeast. So this is sunlight that's coming from the southeast, virtual sunlight. So go ahead, we'll hit run. And now we're going to see that hill shading on the mountain. Now you'll notice that the contours have gone missing. So what we need to do is to adjust the stacking of the layers. So here, if I grab my newly created hillshade layer, I can just click it and start dragging it down, and you're going to see that little black line that shows you where it's going to be in the stack. So what I'm going to do is put the hill shading just above my GeoTIFF. This will allow the contours to be on top of the hill shading. Now, if you want to try shading your mountain from the southwest, then just repeat that hill shade process, but use an azimuth angle of 225. Now let's get on to the real meat of this operation, and that is where we are going to do a color-coded slope analysis of the mountain. So we're going to go to the raster menu again, and we're going to grab Analysis and Slope. Now, input layer again, make sure you choose the GeoTIFF, and we're going to switch the slope to be expressed as percent rather than degrees, because that's how we tend to think about slope. And now again, we don't want it saved to a temporary file. We're just going to save it to its own file here. We'll just call it slope. All right, so we'll run the analysis. And this is going to be another grayscale file. And again, you can see it's been put to the top of the stack. So I'm going to drag this down until it's above the hillshade. So here what we've got is QGIS has color-coded the slope values, 0 slope up to the highest slope, which is 740%, so pretty much a cliff. This isn't helpful. We want to get some colors in here. So double-click on the grayscale band here. And what we need to do is to change the rendering from gray to pseudo-color. So single band pseudo-color from the render menu here. Then what we need to do is to change the color ramp, and we're going to add a color ramp from a different menu here. So you click the Create New Color Ramp, and then from the drop-down list, choose the CPT City list of color ramps. Another dialog will appear here. Go to the Topography section at the left and choose Elevation. Now, this color would be used to on a relief map to show areas of low elevation and high elevation, but what we're going to do here is use this to show areas of low slope and high slope. So go ahead and hit OK. So from 0 to 740%, that's our range of values. Now, nobody builds a trail on anything more than, say, 60%. So what we can do here is for the max value, instead of 741, we can put in 60. So now you can see that these ranges of colors are going to match up with the slope values based on interpolating between 0 and 60%. So go ahead and hit OK. And there's our color analysis. So here you can see low slope areas, and you can see, of course, a lot of areas that are way above 60% on the mountain here, and just no potential for building in those zones. Now, another thing that you can do with your slope is maybe to reduce its intensity in terms of what's displayed on your screen. So if you double click on the slope layer, if you go down to the legend panel, click on the opacity slider and add it to the used widgets section and hit OK. So now you're going to see that you have this opacity slider which you can slide from side to side, which will make it easier to maybe see some of the data in behind. So we're well on our way here to start being able to think about where to put new trails in. How about bringing in trails from Trailforks? So if you go to Trailforks, what you need to do is navigate to your riding area. So here, if I go back up, I'll just show you how to get there. So let's choose Browse by Map, and then zoom out far enough so that you see the little red icon for your riding area. So here, there's Better Mountain. I'll just click on that. Pops up the dialog box for my riding area. Go to the Trails tab now and scroll on down to the bottom, and you will see the download options here for KML. So I'm going to download all of the Better mountain bike trails. Now, what you can do is you can filter for things like get rid of your planned trails. So if you've got a trail that's in the works but hasn't been put there yet and it's not on the ground, no point in adding it to the KML download. So I'm going to get rid of my plan trails so that they aren't being shown. And if there are some hidden trails, I can get rid of those as well, some private trails. So here, it's up to you. You can decide what you want to filter. So I'm going to get rid of the plan trails and hit the filter button at the bottom right. And now when I scroll down to the bottom, I'm just going to grab those particular trails. So I'll hit the KML button here. It downloads it. So I'm going to right click and move this, of course, into the folder where I've got all of the other data that I've created. So I've got my QGIS project, the slope analysis file, and hill shading, and so on. So you can see some of these files are really big, so you're going to end up creating a few gigs of data by the time you've done one or two of these things. All right, so back in QGIS, what I want to do now is add in those KMLs. So I'm going to go to Layer, Add Layer, and this time it's a vector layer. So I'm going to grab those Trailforks trails and hit Open. And then at the bottom here, choose Add. So here it's just showing that there's a whole bunch of different lines, different trails, of course, in this. So just hit Add Layers. And now what QGIS is showing you is it's just confirming the coordinate reference system that you want to use. You can just use the default settings and hit OK. You'll probably only see this dialog box once, anytime that you're working within a certain riding area. Once you've kind of chosen the default coordinate system for imported data, QGIS just rolls with that. So go ahead and hit OK, and then you can hit the Add button at the bottom here. Actually close, because we're done. Okay, so there's all of our trails. Let's get some labels on those trails. So double click on your trail layer, go to Labels, and choose Single Labels. So here for text, I'll leave it as Arial 10 point. For the buffer, I'll have a 1 mil buffer instead of 0.8 because we're using slightly larger text. And then for placement, online, not above, no need to repeat, and that's it, we're done. So there's all the trails. You know what, that text is a little big. I'm going to go back to 8 point on that as well. So under text, 8 point. And I think this will make the buffers still a little big, so I'm going to make those buffers smaller. So if I make my text 8 point, I keep my buffers typically at 0.8 mils, just so the buffer isn't too large around the text. Okay, that's great. So there's all our trails. They're all nicely labeled. Now, one of the other things that's probably really important to be able to do is to know about private properties that are around your riding area. So obviously you don't want to plan any trails where there are environmentally sensitive regions or where there are private parcels of land. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at iMAP BC. And here we're going to be able to get information like the different properties, and we'll be able to tell what kind of properties they are. Are they provincial property, municipal property, private property, what have you. So again, what we got to do is in iMAP, we've got to zoom in to the area. So here's Vetter Mountain. You can see the boundaries of the Cultus Lake Provincial Park. So I'm going to go to Data Sources here, and I'm going to add some provincial layers. So the first thing I want to do is go to the land ownership section, and then I'm going to scroll down to the parcel map BC by owner type and check that box. So when I hit OK, now I'm not zoomed in quite close enough. Okay, so there's all of the different parcels. So the yellow, those are private properties. I think the purple is provincial crown land. So what I want to do is bring all of this information into QGIS so that I have it for reference. Now, I need to get myself more screen space here so that I can try and grab, more of this information. I kind of want to get everything around my riding area in one go. So here, if I turn off my tool labels, and if I hit F11 on my keyboard to make it full screen, you can see I'm kind of getting a little bit more data here. So if I was to try and get a smaller data set, I don't want all of these private properties down here in the arrow area. I'm just really interested in the property on the mountain. So what I want to do is try and just capture the property data on Better Mountain. And here's how to do it. Now I'm going to turn the tool labels back on because we're going to end up going into a different dialog box. So once you've got your property layer turned on, we're going to go to Export and Provincial Layer Download. So there's our cadastrals by owner type. Hit Prepare Order. Now what you could do is, if just your immediate riding area is visible on the screen, you could use the map extent, and that would be good enough. But instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a custom area of interest. So this will allow me to draw a polygon so I can choose the exact area where I'm wanting to snag the property information from. All right, so I'm going to choose Draw a Custom AOI, and it pops up another map. And I've got to zoom in again and draw that polygon just in the area of interest. So I'm using my wheel mouse to zoom in. So here's the polygon tool. So what I'm going to do is draw that polygon. So I want to keep the provincial park here, so I'm just drawing this line. So now I know there's going to be some private properties that I am going to capture on this, probably more than I need. Okay, so double click when you're done. All right, so it'll confirm that you've captured some geometry, some of the parcels. So if I hit next, submit area of interest. So it takes you back to the previous dialog box, and it tells you, I've got 3% of the maximum allowed in a download. And so here's this area of interest. Now what I want to do is get it emailed to me. Okay, so hit I agree, and then hit submit order, and then this file will be emailed to you in just a matter of moments. Okay, so I've got the file downloaded from email, so I'm going to go down to the desktop now, and we're going to bring that data into QGIS. Okay, so here's the file here. It comes to you as a zip file. I'm going to move that into my project folder, and I'm going to extract it. Okay, so it's going to be a really long file name here. I think what I'll just do here is I will call this, instead of that big long name for the folder, I'll just call it parcels or cadastrals. It's the properties, right? So land parcels. Okay, so inside this folder, we've got our PMBC parcels. What I'm going to do, this is the folder inside which is our data for the private properties and other properties on Better Mountain. I'm just going to grab that parcel folder and move it back so that it's directly accessible here. So instead of putting it in another folder, I'm just extracting that thing out and putting the parcel folder with the ArcView files inside it. So inside this folder are a bunch of GIS files. These are called shape files, SHP. And these are what we are going to import now, so we have them for reference inside our QGIS project. So go to the layer menu again, add layer, add vector layer. And so browse now inside that parcel layer and find the SHP file. So there it is right there. And hit open. All right, so then go ahead and hit add and then hit close. So here's all the properties that were within that polygon that I drew. So here I kind of avoided an area where I know there's some private properties already in this area, so I just avoided that completely. And now this polygon, what I want to be able to do is to visually see which one is, like which ones are private land, provincial land, and so on. So if I double click on the layer, if I go to the symbology panel, what I can do here is I can switch from single to categorized. And then what I can do is I can get QGIS, and these are all the different properties of those polygons in there. So these all came from the province. So here it's the owner type that we're interested in. So categorized by owner type, I can go down and choose classify. And now QGIS assigns colors to each one of those properties based on the owner type. So here we've got provincial land, some federal land, municipal, and so on. So the municipal lands are going to be red. If I wanted to change that to some other color, I could, but red is fine. And now what's going to happen when I hit OK is that all of these properties are being colored now by what kind of land they are. So you can see there's not that much in the way of private lands here. There's, the dark blue is private. Oh, sorry, the red is municipal. Okay, so maybe I should change that. So I could change the municipal color from being this to something else. So maybe just a darker green color, maybe. And then the private land, we really want to make sure we don't do anything there. So I'll make those red and hit OK. So now it's really clear where our private lands are so that we can't accidentally trespass on those when we're doing our trail planning. Now, the color of these polygons is pretty strong. If you want to make them a little bit transparent, double click on the parent name of the layer. And like we did earlier, go down to the legend section and grab the opacity slider and add it in. So this will allow you to take that whole layer and make it more transparent so that it's, not completely obliterating any data that's in behind it. So the next thing, of course, that we want to do is to talk about planning a new trail and how you can draw a line in QGIS so that you can transfer that line off to, say, Gaia GPS so that you can walk it, do a recon based on that line, and make a final plan for a new trail. Now, for my layer stack here, I'm going to make sure that all of my trails are at the top of the list here. And then all of my sort of colored stuff like my slopes and my polygons. So again, here I just want to have that behind. So just make sure that all my trails and my contours are on top. And then my polygons and other colored parts of the project are lower. So just have a look at the stack there. All right, so we are going to now work on creating a new trail location. Now, by looking at QGIS, you're probably going to be able to find places where you could build trails where maybe an old road has been overgrown. And that's exactly what we are using QGIS to do. Now, I've ridden past this this location that I'm going to be showing you here lots of times. Let me just tone down the polygons a bit more here. And by the way, if you folks ever want to find information about what one of these polygons are, grab the information tool here and then click on an area where you can see one of these tones, and it'll pop up this menu here. So we've got this polygon, and it tells you what the owner type is, provincial land. So we know right now that these trails that are here, they're on provincial land. And so that's not a problem. Okay, so I'm going to tone down these a bit more just so it's a little easier to see our trails. And I'm going to take the slope and tone that down a bit more just so it's, again, easier to see what we're trying to do here. Okay, so in QGIS, if you use the middle mouse button, that does a pan. If you don't have a middle mouse button, there is the pan tool here, which is the hand tool so that you can pan around. If you were in identify mode, you'll need to switch back to hand mode if you've only got a 2-button mouse. So 3-button mouse is definitely recommended. All right, so I've ridden this access road here. But if I had just turned my head a little bit to the right, I might have noticed through the trees that this looked like something, like a road. Didn't notice it. It's all grown over. So when I got the LiDAR scan and I looked at this and I was like, oh my goodness, I've been there how many times, never noticed that that road was there. So I thought, well, let's start planning a recon of it. And that's what we're going to do right now. So what we need to do is to add a layer for the new lines that you're going to draw where these new trails could be created. So we're going to create a new layer. So we're not adding, we're creating a layer, and we'll create a geopackage layer here. That's ArcGIS's own layer format. And so for database here, I'm going to call this new trail. So you can have more than one new proposed trail in this list. You could have multiple trails. And so for the geometry type here, it's going to be a multi-line. And for our coordinate system here in this drop-down menu, choose the project coordinates. Now, QGIS is going to give a unique number to each one of these trails. So it'll be trail 1, 2, 3 as you create them. Now what we need to do is to give a name, a text name to each one of these trails here. So what we need to do is to create a field, a text field that will get added to each one of these lines. So for name, it's just going to be name. There we go. And typically max of 80 characters. Add that field to the list and you're good to go. Now again, let's make sure that our new trails are up here towards the top of the stack, maybe at the top of the stack, the very, very top. I'll move the contours down. Now once a layer has been created, you've got to enable editing. So you've got to switch into edit mode, and that's done by clicking this yellow pencil. And once you've done that, you can start drawing these lines. And so you're going to create a series of straight line segments. So once the pencil mode is, you've enabled editing mode, we're going to zoom in here. So again, I'm using my wheel mouse to zoom in. And I'm going to start creating a new line. All right. So here is where this existing trail is, and then this little old spur road is under some undergrowth. And this is where I want it to start. So I'm going to start just clicking, and you can see that right from where I've started, there's the first click, and I've got this dashed red line. It's very faint, and that's the first segment of this new line I'm going to draw. So I'm just going to keep on drawing segments. If you kind of screw up where you're drawing the line, don't worry about it. You can edit it later. For now, the main thing is just getting this line drawn. So I'm left clicking to place each line segment, and then I'm using my wheel mouse to get me down, to pan me around on the mountain. Okay, so I'm going to keep working my way down here. I don't really know if this is the best route. I'll have to figure that out when I do my recon. Okay, so I'm just working my way across the land here. And where do I want to end up? It was... Okay, about here. Okay, so you obviously need to know where you're starting and stopping your trail, but when you're done, right-click to end the new line that you are drawing. So the FID, that's the unique number for the line. QGIS will create that, give it a text name, and there you go. So the new line will be red. If you find that a little bit too thin, go ahead and double-click on your layer that you've created. And go to symbology, and here I'll change the color to red. And make the line weight 0.5, so that'll make it nice and easy to see. Okay, so there is our new climb trail. Now when you're done with it, you can hit the save button, or you can just hit the yellow pencil icon to turn off editing mode, at which point QGIS will ask you if you want to save your changes. And indeed we do. Now if you want to edit the track later, make sure that that layer is current. And then what you got to do is go back and hit the pencil icon again. And then just beside the button where you added the line feature, there's a drop-down menu, and you want to choose Vertex Tool for the current layer. So now what you can do is put your cursor, you can zoom in on any of the lines that you've drawn, and you're going to have a few different modes. If you put your cursor on top of the line, you'll see that if you get to a vertex, it draws a circle. And here it is here. So what you can do is when you've got your cursor over a circle, you're hovering over it, click it, and you can move that circle to a new location. Circle appears, left click, move to a new location, left click. Now, if you move your cursor along to the middle of the segment, you'll see a red plus appear. If you click that, it will create a little rubber band at your cursor and allow you to place that new vertex. There it is. It allows you to add a new vertex. So if you hover over a circle, that allows you to relocate a vertex. If you hover over a circle and left click it, but then hit the delete key, it'll delete that vertex. So you can hit the plus, add a vertex, hover, left click, and then delete it. Now, if you hover over one of these segments, but you're not at the middle to add a vertex, and you're not at an end to select a vertex, if you click it, it moves the whole segment. So this would allow you to move the whole segment, and then the segments on either end will stretch as that new segment is being relocated. Now, at the beginning and end of the line that you've drawn, if you hover there, you'll see a little yellow or a purple plus that will appear. If you click it, that will allow you to add more line segments along that end, and then you can just right-click to finish. When you're done with your edits, hit save, and then you can disable the editing mode. That left sidebar there, you can see I just dismissed that. Okay, so there's our new climb trail. Now what we want to do now is to export this to Gaia so that we can do a recon following this line. So right click on the layer here, and you can choose Export, Save Features. So what we want to do is save this as a KML file from all the other different file types here, and you can give it a file name here. New climb 1. Okay. So all of this is fine. We don't want to add this layer to the map. We've already got it here, so let's uncheck the box at the bottom and hit OK. All right. So now that new file can be exported into Gaia. So if you can open up Gaia Desktop, I'd do it there. Or you can send it to your phone, I guess, and you can import it there on Gaia. I've got a separate video that goes through that process if you're not familiar with it. The next thing I want to talk about here is 3D visualization. So if we were to look at the hill shading mode, it kind of looks like we could get some 3D information out of this, and we certainly can. What QGIS can do is to show us a 3D view of the mountain. So if we go to the layer, or the view menu rather, go to 3D map views and choose new 3D map view. Now, based on the layers that are on, those layers are going to be displayed to you in a 3D map view window. I would recommend that you uncheck the box here for docking. This just allows the 3D map view to float over top of your other views, and it's less annoying. Now what we need to do is configure the 3D view to use the GeoTIFF to generate 3D forms for our data set. So if we hit the wrench icon here, go to Configure, and then in the terrain section, we don't want flat, we want based on our DEM. And then of course what we need to do is in the dialog below, point the 3D view to our GeoTIFF. That should be it. So if we hit OK, it's going to take a few seconds here, but QGIS is going to generate a 3D view of the mountain. Now again, use your middle mouse button up and down, changes the vertical elevation of the camera, and then holding down your mouse button and going from side to side does an orbit. Rolling in with the mouse, so this is rolling upwards, I guess, zooms you closer. Rolling back zooms you farther out. So here what we're looking at right now, this is the shaded analysis of the mountain. Based on whichever layers are set current, that affects what you see in the 3D map view window. So if I turn off the hill shading, you can still see we've got our contours floating here, but if we turn on the slope analysis, there we go. So now we can see where the lower slope areas of the mountain are and look at it in 3D. So obviously pretty cool stuff. Okay, so that's all I've got to show you. That's a lot of information to digest in one sitting. Um, Feel free to look at the timestamps down below so that you can maybe just work on one section of getting this data set together. I've also got a link in there so that you folks can see how to bring that KML export that we created for a new proposed route and bring that into Gaia. All right, feel free to contact me. My email address is wes@fvmba.com.